Yellow Cole here to give you 5 tips for early sobriety. I had a lot of early sobriety. My early sobriety lasted for like 10 years because I kept relapsing. So I have a bit I could say about this, but a few things that really helped me, especially from having so many things that I realized that didn't help me. Contrast is key. Some things that worked. 1, community. I know that we want to think that we're special and that we can figure it out on our own, but you can't. You're going to need some support. We are interdependent creatures and we need help. So while we can go at it alone a little bit, it might work for a bit, we need connection, we need community, and we really need reflection because, well, us in our own heads sometimes, often, is part of the problem. So that reflection can be really powerful. And when we're in connection with people who share different stories, but similar in so many ways, we get that reflection of humanity. It makes us not feel so alone, not so separate, different, which addiction can really, it's really good at making us feel like we are uniquely flawed. And that's just not true. So whenever we can lean into community, especially community dealing with similar issues as us, it's number one. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. So whether that looks like some sort of meetings, whether that looks like your yoga studio, whether it looks like sober living, or like IOPs or recovery courses, there's lots of different ways that you can reach out to the recovery community. It's growing. It's amazing. It feels like it's like finally getting cool to get into recovery, which it didn't seem like that. Well, just not up in my head back in the day. It was really hard to convince me of that, but I am fully convinced now. All right. So number 1, community. Number 2, to play off of that, boundaries. So you want to know who your community is, and you also want to know who your community is not. So both of these things very important. So what are your boundaries around people? That's one thing. Who do you not need to associate? Who is not supportive in making your trigger town not go off? Who is, so who are those people that make it challenging? And this idea that we avoid certain things sometimes can be called avoidance coping, which in the long term isn't the best solution of like having to, buffer ourselves from the world. But in the short term, in early sobriety, yeah, buffer yourself. Do what you need to do to get a pattern going on in your body and your mind, a pattern of some resiliency and some resourcing. So think about boundaries in terms of people. Think about boundaries in terms of places. Where are your triggers? Where did you used to use and drink at? Maybe take different ways home. And sometimes we pretend like we don't. It's insidious. It can be very insidious. But get really honest with yourself. Some boundaries around, often the boundary needs to be with ourselves. What are you doing? What are you not going to do? Who are you not going to call? It's often like an action that we're doing. So sit with that. What are some people, places, and things that are not supportive in my recovery right now? It doesn't mean it has to be forever, but we need to put some patterns in place to be more resilient moving forward. Okay, number 3. Accountability. So this kind of weaves in with community and boundaries. So you're wanting to find a few people that you can be accountable to. They'll probably be in your community, and they might hold you accountable to you achieving and sticking with your boundaries. Accountability can be really good as well in terms of, well, for me, for example, it's hard for me to keep dates with myself. If I'm like, I'm going to go to this meeting, or I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to do this thing, I can convince myself that it's maybe better for tomorrow or for the next day. But whenever I make a social contract with somebody, or I'm like, I'm going to meet you at this meeting, or let's go to the river instead of, out to the club, or whatever it is, that accountability is really supportive, that we're showing up. Sometimes, often in addiction, we're not showing up for ourselves. That's part of the issue. But maybe we can form a few connections where you can show up for other people in these certain moments. Therapy can be really, really helpful here, and your therapist can help you set these boundaries, and these can be a really good accountability support as well, and help you put those in your life too. So finding some ways to be accountable, some places to check in with. Also, someone that you can call when things are going south, when the red alarm is going off. Who are you going to call? Like, who is the person that you're going to reach out to? That also is, I'm going to put also that under accountability, because not setting with that and dealing with it alone, again, that's a tendency, is that you're going to take care of it yourself. But that's part of the problem, is we have to learn to reach out. We have to make it a reflex to seek connection and seek support when things start to go south, instead of going down the old rabbit hole. All right, number 4, a daily practice. There's so many variations on this theme, but the theme is important, that the practice is important. It's something that you're committing to. And in this commitment that you're showing up for yourself, and you do it again and again and again, you're subconsciously telling yourself that this is important, you're important, and this is powerful. We're also just setting a baseline of consistency towards something good for ourselves as well, which might be new for many of us. It was definitely new for me. So that's some of the whys, but the what could the practice be? Well, there's so many options. I get up in the morning and I have a glass of water, and then I try to sit for about 10 minutes. I often sit with Sam Harris. I have the Sam Harris meditation app or Insight Timer. I'll sit for like 10 minutes, and then I'll try to move my body. It doesn't always happen like this. Sometimes I get up and I wiggle around, or I get up and I go for a walk, or I get up and do something. I try not to grab my phone first thing in the morning, but I'm doing something intentional before I'm getting dragged around by whatever the world has in store for me that day. Yeah, so it's carving out that space to kind of wake up within ourselves before we are reaching out into the world. So maybe you're a runner, maybe you want to walk, maybe you garden, maybe you paint, maybe you sit and read a book. That's something I try to do in the morning as well, is to read for a little bit. And really, it's such a nourishing practice, because you are putting yourself first. You're actually saying, I'm going to set a foundation for my day, and then I'm going to let you as in the whole world, do your damnedest or whatever, because we can't control what goes on out there. So getting a foundation of a few things that we can just sit and center with ourselves is so valuable, and it's always going to shift. And I encourage you to stay curious about what feels nourishing and what feels like it's not working, and it can shift. It doesn't always have to be the same thing. So a daily practice. In yoga, we call that sadhana. And if you want to incorporate yoga into your daily practice, which I highly suggest, I've got you covered. I have tons of yoga videos, so check it out. All right, number 5, pleasure. I think that this is important, that we find some way. You're going to have to, in my case anyway, I'll speak for myself, I had to really reshape my conception of fun and play and pleasure, and I just thought that sobriety was going to be a slog. Like, what was I going to do with my life? So I slowly had to rebuild that, finding ways to have fun. I'm rebuilding the serotonin and the dopamine in my brain, and what is supportive. So explore. You don't know what you love. There's so many things that you love that you don't know yet. Like, we're rediscovering ourselves. So stay curious and find some things that feel good in other ways. For me, for example, my pleasure receptors were only filled by big boom, bang things. Like, I needed lots of action in order to get that checked. So it was challenging in the beginning. Not saying that won't be challenging, but it needs to be rewritten. Life is not over, it's just starting. And being able to slowly rediscover is a gift. You know, sobriety in general is a gift. There's so many people that don't get this opportunity. And it can be really hard to sustain. So I hope that these tips are supportive to help you sustain it, because it can be challenging, and it is so absolutely worth it. Yeah. And if you need some support, I run a beautiful program called Emerge Recovery. You can check out the link in the description. There'll be a link up here as well. And we go through yoga philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, neuroscience, attachment theory, modern psychology, all of these different angles, because I want people to set up their own recovery journey. It looks different for all of us. And so we come together in community and we get curious and we discover and we learn from one another, and there's the accountability, and I think it's pretty fun. I think there's a pleasure component there as well. And we learn about boundaries, and there's accountability, and there's yoga. So a lot of these things I feel are in that program, and you don't have to find it there. There's many other places that you can find it, but I encourage you that you do. So see if you can check these boxes on your early recovery. I think they'll be really supportive. And if you're interested in more information about Emerge, and I highly suggest that you do, then drop your email in the link below, and I'll send you that info as well as a resource list of some of my favorite podcasts and books and some online meetings to get you started. Let me know if you have any questions. And I'm here to chat about it.